Hello, I'm Blue Foster. Easy, ready, willing, overtime. Where does it stop? Where do you dare me to draw the line? Welcome to my video. I'm going to be blind judging little snippets of prose writing from, 10 randomly selected books. I used the library thing website to, first of all, I have all my books in there. But I used it to generate 10 random books, because if you go to your profile, it gives you 10 random ones. One of which, Demon Copperhead, I could not locate easily. I didn't want to go downstairs and find it, really, to be honest. And so I do not have that. I regenerated another one. And what we're going to be basically doing is flipping to a random page in each of these books and looking for the first, paragraph of just prose writing, not dialogue, just prose, and we're going to be judging it. And for a lot of these, I haven't read them, and it's going to be premature judgment, stupid, silly, whatever, but that's the fun of the game. We're just going to be having fun with it and seeing what happens. A couple of these I actually love, and one of these, it's going to be hard to find just a section of prose, because I don't think that there is one. Let's get into it. Here's the 10 books that I have. I've got Alexandre Dumas' La Reine Margot. I've heard that this is kind of boring, but I got it from some great Instagram bookseller. Beautiful Oxford World Classics edition. Got it. Awesome. The Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers, her debut novel. Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. Paul Auster's Oracle Night. Nicholson Baker's Vox. Phillip Freedenberg's America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots. Thank you, Rick Harsh. 10th of December by George Saunders. Haruki Murakami's Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. The Gap of Time by Jeanette Winterson, and Many Marriages by Sherwood Anderson, which is one of his novels that people don't tend to read his novels. They tend to just kind of read Winesburg, Ohio. I'm just going to start straight off the top with La Reine Margot. This is in translation, so I don't know how great of a judgment this is going to be. Let's see who translated it real quick. Okay, actually impossible to find in the book. I have no clue. Don't worry about it. We're just going to dive right in. Let's see. A lot of dialogue here, Alexander. I'm going to keep skipping around until I find just a block of prose writing. Okay. Charles read, or literally devoured, the pages, and each page, as we have said, was gummed to the next. De Alencon gazed wildly on this terrible spectacle. Well, God can only guess what on his earth is going on here. He's devouring the pages, page by page. Literally, he's eating them. They're gummed to each other. I think he was having an awesome time. I think it's his fluids are on the book, and then he's eating. I'm not totally sure what's happening here. But if we're talking, the point of this is not to speculate on exactly what is happening, but to talk about the sentences. Let's do it again. Charles read, or literally devoured, the pages, and each page, as we have said, was gummed to the next. So we had a lot of little comma-separated clauses here. I like it. Charles read, or literally devoured, the pages, and each page, as we have said, was gummed to the next. My first thought is it's kind of Henry Jamesian. I don't like when people do the Ian thing to the end of a name. It's kind of Henry Jamesy. But not quite, because it's so casual and so clear, not opaque at all. De Alençon gazed wildly on this terrible spectacle. I'm just getting popular kind of dramatic writing from this. I'm interested in the incident. I'm interested in what's happening here. That kind of interests me, but the sentences are precise and fine. They're not lighting up my world, but they're precise and they're fine. Makes me want to read the book just to see what's going on there. I'm saying that like I'm trying to sell you the book. On to The Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers. I have not read this. Gorgeous copy, though, of her first novel. I would question if this is a first paperback edition or something. I mean, look at that beautiful green text. This is, I believe, a child's perspective on a wedding day, something of that sort. I've heard Carson McCullers. I've heard of her as a kind of great, wonderful Southern, newer, not literally contemporary, but not as old as Flannery O'Connor. Not as old as William Faulkner. Not as old as Mark Twain. All right, so we're just going to dive right in. I think that we're going to find something precise and pretty beautiful, but I don't know. We're going to find out. Here we go. It's page 45. It was still early in the morning when F. Jasmine left the house that day. The soft gray of the dawn had lightened, and the sky was the wet pale blue of a watercolor sky just painted and not yet dried. There was a freshness in the bright air and cool dew on the burnt brown grass. From a backyard down the street, F. Jasmine could hear children's voices. She heard the calling voices of the neighborhood children who were trying to dig a swimming pool. They were all sizes and ages, members of nothing, and in the summers before, the old Frankie had been like leader or president of the swimming pool diggers in that part of town. But now that she was 12 years old, she knew in advance that, though they would work and dig in various yards, not doubting to the very last the cool, clear swimming pool of water, it would all end in a big, wide ditch of shallow mud. Whoa, okay. We had one turn of phrase that I really, well, the first thing that caught my eye was this. I love a kind of repetition of description of a thing, like this. From a backyard down the street, F. Jasmine could hear children's voices. She heard the calling voices of the neighborhood children. I like that. I like saying that F. Jasmine heard them and then returning with a pronoun in a new sentence. Kind of like starting, going back a little bit and starting again. Something to me that always feels poetic, that always feels... maybe it's just because it feels colloquial. It feels like somebody speaking. From a backyard down the street, F. Jasmine could hear children's voices. She heard the calling voices of the neighborhood children who were trying to dig a swimming pool. Very, very down to earth, beautiful, gorgeous. All right, this is what got me though. Really loved this. They were all sizes and ages, members of nothing. And in the summers before, the old Frankie had been like leader or president of the swimming pool diggers in that part of town. Blah blah blah. I love members of nothing. Kind of just puts into words in a little bit of an oblique and poetic way the lack in their child life of what awaits them, being members of something, being part of a constituent body of something. I like that. That is a good description of a very specific part of childhood. So, enjoyed, in one sentence, made me smile. Enjoyed it a lot. Good. Let's move on. This is Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. My only brush with Woolf so far has been reading a little bit of The Waves, and I wasn't feeling it, wasn't in the mood. I love modernism. I love any sort of experimental writing, and she's one of those where I'm sure I'm going to get into her at some point. But I've not read any. I tried to read The Lighthouse really early into when I got back into reading. I thought it was cool, but again, it didn't really suck me in. I wasn't really feeling it. So we're going to try here. We're going to do To the Lighthouse. So this starts with a line of dialogue, just one word. Fatal, Paul agreed, springing up. And as they went slithering down, he kept quoting the guidebook about these islands being justly celebrated for their park-like prospects and the extent and variety of their marine curiosities. But it would not do altogether, this shouting and damning your eyes, Andrew felt, picking his way down the cliff. This clapping him on the back and calling him old fellow and all that, it would not altogether do. It was the worst of taking women on walks. Once on the beach they separated, he going out onto the Pope's Nose, taking his shoes off and rolling his socks in them and letting that couple look after themselves. Nancy waded out to her own rocks and searched her own pools and let that couple look after themselves. She crouched low down and touched the smooth, rubber-like sea anemones, who were stuck like lumps of jelly to the side of the rock. Brooding, she changed the pool into the sea and made the minnows into sharks and whales and cast vast clouds over this tiny world by holding her hand against the sun, and so brought darkness and desolation like God himself to millions of ignorant and innocent creatures, and then took her hand away suddenly and let the sun stream down. Out on the pale crisscross sand, high-stepping, fringed, gauntleted, stalked some fantastic leviathan. She was still enlarging the pool, and slipped into the vast fissures of the mountainside. And then, letting her eyes slide imperceptibly above the pool and rest on that wavering line of sea and sky, on the tree trunks which the smoke of steamers made waver upon the horizon, She became, with all that power sweeping savagely in and inevitably withdrawing, hypnotized. In the two senses of that vastness and this tininess, the pool had diminished again. Flowering within it made her feel that she was bound hand and foot and unable to move by the intensity of feelings which reduced her own body, her own life, and the lives of all the people in the world forever to nothingness. So listening to the waves, crouching over the pool, she brooded. Oh my God. Best one yet. Beautiful. Wonderful. I loved, first of all, the parenthetical here. Out on the pale crisscross sand, high-stepping, fringed, gauntleted, great verb, stalked some fantastic leviathan. She was still enlarging the pool. And then later in her perception, when the pool diminishes to its regular size, another, in parentheses, the pool had diminished again. Love that. Confident move. Always enjoy that. Feels kind of, always like a little bit metatextual when they do a parentheses in fiction. But gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. And a great depiction of those little subjective experiences of being a kid. Sort of like the Members of Nothing thing from a third person view. Wow, actually this is third person too. But it's done so well that you are in her head. Gorgeous. I guess that's the effect that people talk about with Virginia Woolf. Totally love this. Totally love this. Totally love kind of playing with like metaphor by talking about a fantastic leviathan stalking, but then in the parenthetical saying she was still enlarging the pool. So not like living in the metaphor, but kind of playing with it. Just kind of beautiful language, a kind of language game. And yeah, kind of amazed by this. Yeah, there were a couple lines that didn't completely tickle my fancy, but the overall effect was wonderful. When she says, like God himself to millions of ignorant and innocent creatures, feels like a bit much. I don't love it, but a lot of parts of this are gorgeous. This was, in short, wonderful. There's never going to be a novel that doesn't have, like, excesses and whatever. All right, Paul Auster's Oracle Night. Let's see what's popping off here. I like Paul Auster. I read his Music of Chance and adored it. All right, we got a lot of dialogue here. Here we go. After we hung up, I lifted the receiver off the hook again and dialed Trouse's number. Mary's office was on 5th Avenue between 12th and 13th Streets, not far from where John lived, and it occurred to me that he might be interested in getting together for lunch. I also wanted to know how his leg was doing. We hadn't talked since Saturday night, and it was time to check up on him and get the latest report. I'm just getting like kind of functional. I found that with the Music of Chance, I loved his writing style in that it was simple, but it served the absurd and the surreal. And so I assume that the absurd in this book, from what I vaguely remember of the synopsis, comes from the actual happenings of the book. And I'm not really getting a taste of much here besides a kind of noirish, like, Mary's office was on 5th Avenue, not far from where John lived. I wanted to know how his leg was doing. We hadn't talked, and it was time to check up on him and get the latest report. Kind of getting a little noir thing. Fine, whatever. Interested in reading that completely. All right, Nicholson Baker Box. I actually love this book, and this is all dialogue. As far as I remember, literally completely dialogue. And there's like maybe a couple lines of description. This is two people, a man and a woman, who join like a sex chat line and like room, and they talk to each other, and then they privately have a phone call all night, and that's what you're reading dialogue wise. I love this novel. Reminds me hugely of the Before trilogy, the Richard Linklater movies. Very human, messy, funny, embarrassing, kind of sexy, smart, and cool. All right, let's do it. I went, you, and the painter in the living room turned in surprise and registered my existence for the first time. My hands were still planted on the cans of paint, and back in the hall, while the one gymnast painter was sinking himself unapologetically deep into my ass, I felt the other, the one who'd responsibly used the right kind of paint all along, now use his thumbs to hold my real self open, my lips, and then I felt him slide slowly up my real hole. All right, so this whole book is freaky, but we're in a freaky ass part there. I actually remember this section. This is the lady is describing one of her fantasies, and I think that's part of the fun of this book is just the unabashed, embarrassing sexual language where it's not always hitting. Like, it's not always like, wow, that was a sexy turn of phrase. It's just like messy and embarrassing, like real sex talk is, and always kind of out of fashion, like real sex talk is. And yeah, kind of cringy and fun. My real hole, I mean, that's a potent phrase. All right. Next up, we got Phillip Freedenberg, Called to the Cactus Boots, a diagnostic. This is a classic Rick Harsh, Samizdat, Corona Samizdat Press. This was big on Instagram. This was big with some certain readers. And Rick Harsh is a wonderful dude, doing great shit. I absolutely love what he's doing. Putting out, from Slovenia, putting out awesome, maximalist, challenging fiction. And if I remember correctly, this novel is essentially like, it's like this big, weird, metatextual fantasy, fake phantasmagoria thing where Rick Harsh is involved. There's a drawing of Rick Harsh as a baby, I think. And there's like this fake cult that's talked about and all these strange typographic things. This is the vaguest description ever. So let's just go in there and see what we can find. All right, we got something relatively straightforward immediately. With an unflinching suddenness, the small-sized suitcase radio wreckage of the Zenith was spread across the floor. The selenium diode rectifier, the torn-up cotton poplin cloth speaker cover, the wave rod magnets, the nuts, the bolts, the tuning condenser, the radio-organ tone control, the time band selector, the wave rod, the hinged front cover, the speakers, the shattered pentode tube amplifier oscillator. It was all there, a splattered crime scene of vintage radio innards gore, nakedly dispersed and dead on the floor. But all the many components that thus far had delivered to us what we could call the fundamental mystery of Rick Harsh, there it is, all at once began melting from solids into small liquid globules before our very eyes. Then these small liquid globules transformed into small psychedelic phosphorescent royal water aqua regia nitrohydrochloric acid coleoptera bugs that awakened with an excited, vigorous energy, crawling like a kaleidoscopic ground lightning toward our feet and legs. I like that turn of phrase. Before we could even think to flee from the putrid horror of this morphological visual nightmare, the small, militarized, hallucinatory, sexually dimorphic, rainbow-colored horned beetles, these evolutionary novel tripoxylus dichotomous madmen, stormed our feet and legs, now completely off the floor, and scurried up, raging in an expedited, rapid flurry. I don't love the use of expedited there. The broken elements of the Zenith, now completely transformed and transported from the floor, now an insane dazzle of body-attacking beetles. I like that. They raided every orifice in our heads, both Jeff and me. They burrowed into our noses, ears, and mouths, both of us exerting muffled screams as the beetles bored deep into our bodies, and then they were all gone, storming somewhere inside our bodies, scrambling and searching for something. Maybe they were looking for Rick. Maybe they were looking for us. But now we knew, at least, that they were buried deep somewhere inside us both. Fun. Reminds me a little bit of William T. Vollmann's first novel, All You Bright and Risen Angels. I don't think it's all you. You Bright and Risen Angels. What with the crazy bug happenings and the kind of maximalist style. I like it. The lists, the long kind of lists of not only adjectives, but lists of like components of the radio thing and whatnot. Very classic for this kind of postmodern maximalist thing, but fun. The sense I got from reading that whole thing was fun. This has got to be a fun book to read. I mean, you can tell they had fun writing this already just from that small snippet, bringing in Jeff, the artist, as a character, and Rick Harsh, and just crazy beetle bug happenings. Just fun. I like the way that it's written, and I like the swinging high with the whole maximalist thing. It's a good time. I liked it. I would read more. 10th of December by George Saunders. Love this book. Love G. Saunders. Let's just dive in. His voice is different in every story a lot of the time, like within one collection. So we'll see what happens. Today, Ava's character, Miss Ross, sent home note. Ava acting out. Ava grouchy. Ava stamped foot. Ava threw fish food container at John M. when John M. asked for his turn to feed fish. This is not like Ava, Miss R says. Ava sweetest, kindest kid in class. Okay, love it. So we get his game, his language game, where he's really, as he describes in Swimming in a Pond in the Rain, he's really looking for the next best word to come next. And he ends up a lot of the time with this kind of truncated, speechy style, very voicey, which kind of means nothing. But always fun syntax, like kind of caveman speaky in this part. Funny. He's always funny in this. The weird syntax always adds to the funniness. It's a big influence on me. I love the way that he writes. Today, Ava's teacher, Miss Ross, sent home note. Yes. A lot better. And this is this is Semplical Girl Diaries. So these are like diary entries, and that's why it's all truncated and whatever. But he kind of gets to do this puppet master thing where by imposing this like constraint with the kind of truncated diary entry thing, he gets to, as an author, make it very entertaining and funny and syntactically interesting. Okay. Hardboiled Wonderland and the End of the World. I tried to read this. I didn't care. I didn't really like it very much. I like Haruki Murakami, though. His sheep book. What the fuck is that? What is that called? What's the sheep book called? What the hell is a sheep? I don't fucking know. That one, loved. But this was just a little too wacky crazy for me. I wasn't really feeling it. So we're going to go to actually where I have a little bookmark in here. I didn't know any more of the lyrics, so I made some up. Everyone's gathered around the fire, the pechka, when a knock comes at the door and father goes to inquire, and there's a reindeer standing on wounded feet, saying, I'm hungry, give me something to eat. So they feed it canned peaches. In the end, everyone's around the stove singing along. Okay, so I like this. This is almost giving like Richard Brautigan a little bit. Yeah. So the character is like coming up with song lyrics, and I like that rather than just putting the song lyrics in song lyric form, he's working it into the prose and including the rhyme while describing what he's singing. I didn't know any more of the lyrics, so I made some up. Everyone's gathered around the fire, the pechka, when a knock comes at the door and father goes to inquire, and there's a reindeer standing on wounded feet, saying, I'm hungry, give me something to eat. So they feed it canned peaches. In the end, everyone's sitting around the stove singing along. That's kind of a fun trick. That's a cool way to do that. And I find that Murakami is more stylistically interesting than his like popular conception would give you. He is always kind of a joy to read on like a whimsical atmosphere level, but I think it's because of his sentences a lot of the time. It's of course about like what happens in the books as well, the strange happenings, but I find that his sentences are kind of underrated. I think he's good. Okay, The Gap of Time by Jeanette Winterson. I've wanted to read this, sort of. It's not been calling to me the most out of her books, but I've wanted to read her in general. This is like a retelling of some sort. Yeah, a retelling of The Winter's Tale. Her cover version of it. That's a cool way to put it. Let's see what we got. Even as Leo was saying what he said, he couldn't believe that such idiot words could come out of the idiot mouth and his idiot face, when all he wanted to do was put his arms around his wife and cry until his tears made a river that would float them both away from this landlocked place. All right, love it. It's giving me Scott McClanahan a little bit. Just that really like informal, talky style. The idiot words, idiot face and stuff is not totally working for me. I think it's kind of an overdone image. It's not totally working for me, but like the effect, the cadence is working for me. Even as Leo was saying what he said, he couldn't believe that such idiot words could come out of the idiot mouth and his idiot face, when all he wanted to do was put his arms around his wife and cry until his tears made a river that would float them both away from this landlocked place. No punctuation there. Besides like an apostrophe and couldn't. Love it. Absolutely love it. I love the no punctuation. I love the way that it makes it flow. I love the informal style. Good. All right. Many Marriages by Sherwood Anderson. This is our last book. This is, again, one of his novels about a guy who I think leaves his marriage to go like become an artist or something. I'm not sure. That's kind of what Sherwood Anderson did, as if I understand it correctly. All right, let's see what we got. That his imagination could so flame up, running along whole streets of houses and wiping out walls as a wind shakes the branches of the trees, was a new and living wonder to himself. A life-giving thing has been given to me. For many years I have been dead, and now I am alive, he thought. To give the fuller play to his fancy, he got off the sidewalk and walked in the center of the street. The houses lay before him, all silent, and the late moon had appeared and made black pools under the trees. The houses, stripped of their walls, were on either side of him. Yeah, gorgeous. I think he's so good. I think Sherwood Anderson is so good. I haven't read this novel, but I think he's so good. There's a couple things that I really love here. That his imagination could so flame up, running along whole streets of houses and wiping out walls as a wind shakes the branches of the trees, was a new and living wonder to himself. There's a music to it. It's a beautiful prosody. I like the alliteration of wiping out walls as a wind shakes the branches of the trees. It's got a great rhythm. Let's see. To give the fuller play to his fancy, he got, I mean, that's just a gorgeous turn of phrase for what he's saying. To give the fuller play to his fancy, he got off the sidewalk and walked in the center of the street. The houses lay before him, all silent, and the late moon had appeared and made black pools under the trees. Fine. Kind of rhymes with the last one, the street and trees. The house, stripped of their walls, were on either side of him. But I like the sentiment, and I love the language, and he is just a language guy, like, just gorgeous, and that's kind of always what I look for. Those are my books. That's my video. That's my game that I played. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll probably do it again. It's a pretty fun thing to do. And it's piquing my interest in some of these, reminding me why I have these books. So thank you. Have a nice day. Au revoir.